You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and today we have a true honor. We have a special guest. You can see his name pop up on the bottom of your screen, but if you're listening to us on podcast radio, we're talking to our guest, Bob Furniss. Today is all about him being a great father, has a great heart, navigating a storm that no parent should ever have to face. It's about also his daughter, Keesha, whom he affectionately calls the warrior princess. Him and his wife found the website that you can go to and learn more about the organization, because I'm telling you, the book that we're about to unpack here is going to be something special. And I believe you're really going to be inspired by this. His daughter, she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer at just 30 years old. And what unfolded after that was a journey that no script could prepare you as a parent. Filled with pain, wisdom, humor, and what Bob beautifully calls Keesha-isms, life lessons rooted in grace, strength, and radiant soul. His new book, On the Blue, it offers us a front row seat, not to just his personal life, but to ultimately a beautiful message that's going to be inspirational. So first and foremost, I want to say to you, Bob, thank you for being on the show today, man. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well, and I appreciate that intro. That was very kind. Thank you.
It was a beautiful story, and I know that this was a special project that you really put a lot of love into it. So kind of take us back for a moment when you got the call, that what was going through your mind, and how did that kind of reshape everything that you kind of look out towards in life?
Yeah, I was actually out of town on a business trip in California, and my wife called me about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. I was at a company sponsored party, and I looked down, and it was a little bit unusual for her to call me. So I picked up the phone, and she said, "I need to talk to you." And I said, "Okay, let me get outside. It's really noisy in here." There was a band playing, and I went outside, and she told me that she was on the way to the hospital, that Keesha was having chest pains and having trouble breathing. And so, immediately we were surprised and thought that she was having heart problems. And they came in a couple of hours after doing some tests and doing a CAT scan, and told my wife and my daughter that we found what we believe to be cancer in your body in multiple places, and we're going to send you to an oncologist tomorrow. So there I am in California. I went back to my room. I got online. I tried to find the red eye special. I went to the airport. I was number 8 or 9 in line. I had this idea that I was going to stand up on a chair and try to talk somebody out of their spot if I needed to. But the airline got me there and got me home the next morning at 9 o'clock. And we took her to the same oncologist that had treated my wife when she had non-Hodgkin's. And it is a long-term survivor from that. And my mom, who had also treated there by the same doctor, who had a glioblastoma about 20 years ago, and she passed away rather quickly. So we had some history with the doctor. We had some history with the cancer center, and they gave us the worst news you can ever have as a person, and especially as a parent. We were sitting in the room. I heard him say, "You have metastatic breast cancer." I believe I knew what metastatic meant, but I don't believe I knew just how much gravitas he was sharing with us. But she had cancer that had metastasized from her breast into her lungs and into her bones. And it eventually took her life at just 34 years old. But those 4 years were amazing years of her becoming the warrior princess. I always called her my little princess, and I added in the warrior, and she became the warrior princess and had one thing on her mind, and that was living another day, another week, another month. And she fought valiantly for 4 years.
When you look at being a parent in the moment of a crisis like that, I can only imagine that everything that used to be normal in your world is now disrupted. And now you almost have to drop everything and attend to what is the most important thing. For you, how did you stay strong for Keesha in those moments when you probably felt like not just the world, crumbling, but just at that moment feeling like, wow, what do we do?
Yeah. Well, the first thing you do is you go to Dr. Google, which you should never do. And you find every possible bad thing that could possibly happen. But in this case, it was metastatic, what we used to call terminal. It meant that outside of a miracle, this cancer or something related to this cancer was probably going to take her life. I think all the way up until 3.5 years later, we didn't see death coming as fast as it came once it metastasized into her. Once the medicine, she was on 14 different chemos, and once it stopped working, she sort of had a quick arc to not being here anymore. But so as a dad, you want to fix everything with your kids. You want your kids to have an easier life than you had. You want your kids to be to have a better life than you did. And as a dad, I could fix a lot of things. If she had a marriage that went south, she could come and live at my house. If she crashed her car, we could get her, we could help get you another car. If your boyfriend breaks up with you, I'll go punch him in the nose if that's what you want me to do. You can do a lot of things as a dad, but you can't fix cancer. And so the one thing that I did, we knew rather quickly that Keesha had missed some signs that she should not have missed. And I'll talk about that in a minute when I talk about the nonprofit, but she missed some signs. But very quickly, I figured that it didn't matter. It didn't matter how we got there at that point. What mattered is, where are we going to go and what are we going to do going forward? And so as a dad, I could be the positive supporter and the positive advocate for her. And so I've been a consultant for 25 years and been in customer service for my entire career. And so when we went to the doctor, you hear words and you hear concepts, but you can't put them together. But very quickly I became the advocate. And so I would ask questions that my wife or my daughter wasn't asking when we went to the doctor. She eventually took over that role and became her own best advocate. And I definitely talk about women needing somebody at the beginning of something like this, or a man or anybody that goes through a cancer diagnosis. You need somebody there with you to help you be your advocate until you can catch up to the concept of where you are and can be your own best advocate. But she was a strong woman, and I was just there to help her not focus on how we got there. And I can tell you a story about that. So Keesha had severe ADD. I talk about this in the book. Had severe ADD when she was growing up, and it was probably the 5th or 6th grade before we figured out what it was. We just thought she was she didn't pay attention. As a father, if I went in and said, put on your shoes, put on your socks, put on your shoes, get your books and put them in the book bag and meet me in the car, I just gave her 4 too many things to do, because the only thing she was going to do was one thing at a time. And once she realized that, or once she got on meds, it got better. But I actually believe, and I think sometimes we look at our kids and we want them to be different. We want them to be better. We want them to succeed. And I look at that flaw, or that disability, not a flaw, but a disability that was in her life. And it became her superpower. It became her ability to think about one thing. And so when the doctor would say, we're going to put you on this med and this is what's going to happen, she would always say, so what happens if that doesn't work? Because her focus was, hey, I'm going to live. And it wasn't a Pollyanna, I'm going to live. Like, she knew how sick she was. She Googled the same Dr. Google that I Googled. And so, but it was her superpower that she would always think, how do I get through this? How do I, she would throw up for 15 minutes at a time when she was on what's called the Red Devil. And she would wipe her face and she'd go, well, I guess that's better on the outside than it is on the inside. Or she would say, well, I hope that was full of cancer because I don't want it inside me. So she just had this spirit of life. And I wear a bracelet that says, live like Keesha, because she taught me what was important in life. And that is to live life to its fullest every day.
I'm glad you said that, because we do need reminders to live life to the fullest. And it's great that you have that bracelet, because every time you see it, it's going to push you to keep pushing.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we need that person or that thing that reminds us that there's bigger things ahead, and it's not always what's going on currently, but it's like, what can we actually do for the future self? Because if we're too caught up in the moment, I like to say we missed out window of opportunities.
Yeah, and I don't believe that what we've done with the nonprofit has given her life meaning or given her legacy, made a legacy for her. I believe she made a legacy for herself, and her life had significant meaning. But we have definitely been able to save some lives as a result of her story. And towards the end of her life, she talked to me multiple times about, hey, Dad, keep telling my story, because I don't want anybody to go through what I've gone through, and I don't want any parent to go through what you and Mom are going through. So tell my story so people will do it the right thing. And the focus of our nonprofit is, which I write about in the book, the focus of the nonprofit is to educate and advocate for women for early detection. And you do that through self-breast exams and through going to the gynecologist or going to your regular doctor and asking for a clinical breast exam. And sometimes that doctor, we've had multiple stories. They're going to tell the daughter or the wife or the lady who's 25 or 30 years old, oh, that's not necessary. You're too young for breast cancer. And what I tell them is, you tell them this story. You tell them this story of a friend of yours who, or a person that you heard a podcast from, and his daughter was just 30 years old, and she went to stage 4. And you tell her about the other ladies that are stories that are on our website. The 27-year-old who the doctor said, I'm sure it's nothing. We'll just watch it. And she said, I have a friend of mine whose daughter had cancer at 30. Can we have it checked? And they had it checked, and it was a very aggressive kind of cancer that the doctor said, we probably would be having a very different conversation if you had pushed me to have you checked. So On to Blue was the culmination. We opened the nonprofit in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic. We've given out 65,000 plus of these cards. This is a card that hangs on the shower head in the bathroom and reminds women, has instructions of how to do it on the back, and it reminds women just to do their monthly self-checks. You can get that for free on our website. If you just go to warriorprincess.org, click on the little pink banner at the top, it'll take you to a page where you just enter your address, remind us where you heard about it, and we'll mail it out. And in fact, if you've got multiple daughters or 5 or 6 friends that you want to give them to, or you've got a women's group that you have 100 people and you want to give 100 of them out, we'll ship them to you free of charge. That's our main focus in the nonprofit, is to educate women on those things.
It's great that you and your wife is, in a way, honoring your daughter with this outreach, advocating for young women and women in general to be alert and observant and do these self-checks, because that's what it takes a lot of times, is for people to be active in the community. What has been the response with your organization? And I'm sure you had some positive feedback from women.
Yeah, it has been amazing. We've had story after story of women who heard about her story and contact us and tell us that either they thought they had cancer and they went through the process and nothing was there, which is what we always hope is the case, or they tell us that they found something, that the story that's online. And there's other stories that the lady who's our massage therapist, who's become a good friend, realized that she hadn't been in a year and during COVID, and she went and they found something and they did a biopsy and it ended up not being breast cancer, but it could have been. That's the point. And then I've had stories how I decided that what our nonprofit was going to focus on. I was in Boston for business about 6 months after she passed away, and I had enough time after my meeting. I looked up. I wanted to see how close I was to Cheers Bar, being a Cheers fan. So I was not too far away. So I walked over to Cheers Bar and I sat down. And while I was sitting there at the bar, a couple sat down next to me and strike up a conversation. And then the wife asked me a question that nobody had ever asked me since Keesha had died. And it was, how many kids do you have? And in a matter of a less than 30 seconds, I went through a whole bunch of stuff in my head. Do I bring down the mood in the bar? Do I tell her the story? Do I just say I have one son and 2 grandkids? What do I tell her? And I decided to tell the story, and I told her about my daughter. And the husband looked at his wife and said, "We have 2 daughters that are in their 25 to 30. Do you know whether both of them have been to the gynecologist and are doing breast exams?" And the wife said, "I do not, but I will before the end of the day, before I get on a plane to fly out of here." So those kind of stories are the stories that we love to hear, where somebody has heard about us, has taken action, and is hopefully still taking action. That's the point. Breast cancer is typically in 5 stages. There's a sort of a stage 0, which is not quite cancer, but could become cancer. It's stage 1 is cancer that's dedicated to the breast or is only in the breast. There's stage 2, which is in the breast and a couple of lymph nodes nearby. There's stage 3, where it gets into the lymph nodes and other parts of the body. And then stage 4 is what she had, which means it's in multiple places in the body, and it's in the lymph nodes and it's in the breast. And the statistics are just hard to fathom. At stage 1, you end up at about a 85 to 95% chance for survival. So 95% chance for survival if you find it early. If you find it in stage 2, it drops to only about an 80 to 85. So again, you've got time to find it and take care of it. At stage 3, it drops to about 60, and at stage 4, it drops much lower than that. So it is something that is survivable if it's found early. And she's an example of not finding it early and what the outcome was.
Yeah.
And one more comment. We got 2 guys sitting here talking about breast cancer. And the first thing that somebody asked me whenever I talk about it, when I show up to talk, is, so you're a man and you're here to talk about breast cancer. And my answer is yes, because I'm also here to talk to the dads. Because if somebody had just told me that I needed to ask, I asked my daughter all the dad questions. I asked her, was she being careful when she got in the car? Was she being careful in the parking lot? Was she being careful when she opened the door? Like all those dad questions I was doing, but I wasn't saying, are you going to a gynecologist or talking to your healthcare provider? And are you doing monthly exams? And so I started a hashtag called Ask Her. And I tell dads, ask your daughter. And what we're finding now is early onset breast cancer is happening as early as 17 to 20 and all the way up to 40, which is where you normally begin to do mammograms. So it is important that young dads or dads ask their young daughters or talk to their wives about the breast cancer and to make sure that they're doing those things.
I appreciate you saying that. And I think that's very important detail for all of us to notice and appreciate. Once again, listen to I'm Focused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest, Bob Furniss. And you can get a copy of his book on the Blue Book. It's available on Amazon. And you also have a website for your nonprofit, warriorprincess.org. When you look at how you've been able to take a painful part of your life and turn around and use it in a positive way, that's going to help countless people. I mean, not just with this show, but with other shows that you've been on, sharing your message. How does it make you feel personally that you're able to allow this to keep reaching more people and more people?
Well, when I first started writing the book, I wasn't sure I had a book. I wasn't sure what I had. I just knew that I had a whole bunch of thoughts in my head that I needed to get out. And I began to write, and I sort of leaned towards writing about my kids, and it became more about her than it was my son. There's some great stories in the book about my son, but and he's a really cool kid. Well, he's almost 40, but he's a really cool guy. He has 3 young children, but I think that what it's done for me and my wife is to give us ways to keep her memory alive. I think about people. So first of all, if you have somebody in your life who loses a child, they want you to talk about their child. They want you to ask questions. Now, they may cry through it, but they don't want you to not talk about her. So it's okay to talk about her. So I love that I get to talk about her. I get to tell her story. I get to talk about her, and people ask me questions, and I get to explain to them how amazing she was. And then secondarily, it's giving me a sort of a hurdle or a line. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2020, and people ask me, how are you doing? And there's some bad days, there's some shaky days, there's some uncomfortable days, but she's my goal. She's my, she's the finish line. because she taught me that you don't lay in the corner in a fetal position and just give up. You live life the best you can in the best way you can. And I think the book also talks about that. It talks about that the Keesha-isms are just cool little sayings that she used to say. And I know we're almost out of time. I'll end with this one. So I went through some of her journals, which she gave me permission to do before she passed away. But I went through her journals, and there was a page where she had drawn this picture of the ocean, and there was a fish, and it said, "Just keep swimming." And I didn't know where that came from, so I Googled it, and it was from Finding Nemo, the movie. And it was Dora and her friend were both lost. And she just said, "Just keep swimming, just keep moving, and we'll be okay. We'll find it. We'll be okay." And I think that her life was the epitome of that you just keep swimming, you just keep trying. And she went to 8 different Luke Bryan concerts in the 4 years that she was there because she was a huge Luke Bryan fan. We went to Colorado. We had a bucket list of things that we did. Went to a Steelers game. We're big Pittsburgh Steelers fans. We did all these things, and to the point that people said she lived more in the last 4 years than I lived in the last 30 years. But as a dad, I could do that. But it was just keep swimming, just put things in front of her that make her believe that life is worth living in the middle of what was a horrible, horrible experience, and a horrible, really a tough way to die. And for me, it's been helped me through my grief to think about how she would react and what she would want me to do with her story and with my grief. She would want me to feel it. I definitely feel it. And sometimes I finish talking on a podcast and I have to go sit down for an hour because I've been talking about her for a while and I miss her so bad. But, the I Am Refocused name that you have in your podcast is to take the focus away from the death and to put the focus on the possibilities for helping other people. It doesn't make the death go away, but the possibilities are there to get positives out of it.
I appreciate you saying that. That I hope our viewers and our listeners will not just be inspired by this guest and the story in the book. Like I say, you can get it on Amazon on the Blue Book. And go to his nonprofit website, warriorprincess.org. Hope you appreciate this message and share it with someone. Share it with every woman that you know.
There you go.
And let's help this message continue to move forward. And I want to say to you, your strength is inspiring, and hope you continue to live life to the fullest, because what I got from this is you have only so much time.
You do.
That window of opportunity is not going to be forever.
Right.
So I appreciate you reminding our viewers and listeners how beautiful life can be and how much memories can be.
Yeah, definitely.
So that said, I want to say to our guest, Bob,
thank you.
Always thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.